Welcome and Happy New Year. This is the Monday, January 9th, 2017, Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger, Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee,
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel,
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker,
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay,
Here.
Councilmember Corsi.
Here. Thank you. Councilmember Vogler did let us know that he would not be here for this meeting this evening. Are there any members of the public that would like to address council?
Yes.
If we could have you come right up to the microphone and give us your name and address.
Hi, I'm Don Parker. I live at 440 North Stonegate Drive, and I have just a couple of really short comment. And my concern is the view protections that are provided by the Woodburn Hills Code and the removal of that code, what it would do to those. The panoramic view preservation was part of the original intent of the development, and it's the basic reason that many of the people on the hillside have bought their homes and their property. And myself, I bought property and built because there was a panoramic view there. The question is kind of an important one because it relates to the value of the property, the tax revenue for the city, and especially the tax revenue for the school district, which I'm a teacher there now, and it's critical. Currently, the views are protected by this subsection. There's an additional document, the final approval on August 28th of '98 also clearly states the views as part of the approval reason. There was a planning department determination in 2012 that talks about preserving the views and what we would do to do that. And of course, the city council themselves have issued the BPA letter, which talked about views extensively and the importance of them. And inside of all the approval documents and all the testimony, there's an engineering cross-section that was designed to show views and actually moved. Stonegate used to be what's now LeBrun, or LeBrun used to be Stonegate, and they put the road up the hill to Stonegate so the homes could enter off of Stonegate, raising them up and therefore getting a view, which when they went off of LeBrun, they would not have a view. And the engineering drawing shows 15-foot trees in the view lines. So that move was made at that time in order to gain views for that strip of homes, which is quite a big portion of the group there. So there was quite a few, and then Phase 4 plat itself has notes on it about view preservation in relationship to the home design, placement, tree heights, a lot of different things, typical repeating of what all these other documents say. So my major concern is that we remove the Woodburn Hills subsection. A number of these guarantees go away because they're related to it or contained within it. So I would just like to see, if we decide to do that, if you folks decide to do that, that we put in place something that will retain the view part of the guarantees that we had, so we don't throw that out with the bathwater, you know what I'm saying. So I just want to make sure we don't have a gap there where all of a sudden we don't have our views anymore. Maybe they'll be there tomorrow, maybe they won't. So that's my my concern, and that's really all I want to express. There's no question associated other than I'm very concerned about it and like to see us consider that. Okay.
Thank you, Don. I know that Mitch's, the trees and view sheds and all of that have been a item of contention all throughout the entire Granite Highlands area up there. So I'm sure that as he goes through in that process, he's likely to keep an eye on that and trying to figure out something that threads the needle, if you would. Yes.
Hi, my name's Carol Parker, 440 North Stonegate Drive. I have a couple of different things I want to talk about, but the one is I just want to clarify the feeling of quite a number of citizens on North Stonegate regarding this problem of the removal of the Woodburn Hills Code and the fact that it takes away all of our view preservation. I just want to point out that we're all on the same page on this because you, as the city council, wrote the letter to the BPA, which was also a resolution by the city council. So I think we're on the same page in every way. So I can't see why you would want to take away the view preservation aspects of the code. The view preservation aspects of the code help us to preserve not only the values of the view properties, but also of the other properties in Washougal and in our developments. And we know that the city, the schools, everyone needs to have this tax base. That's my first point. My second point is going back to last year when you called the meeting of the citizens of the city regarding the traffic problems on Woodburn Hill. And I would like to see you follow through on the promise, I think it was a promise, that you made to set up a citizen/city task force or committee to tackle these problems related to the parking. My husband and I and other citizens from Granite Highlands have volunteered to serve, and we've answered your emails and told you of convenient times to meet, and we don't seem to have been able to get anything off the ground. I'm concerned about the safety on LeBrun because I personally, from my home, witnessed a near head-on collision of a semi-truck and a car right in the area where the parking is allowed on LeBrun. And I think we need to start now. I think that the parking problem is going to be, the safety and parking problem are going to be extreme with Granite 3 on the way. And I suggest that parking be stopped on LeBrun and measures be taken to ensure the safety of the residents before any grading or any other permits are issued for Granite 3. Historically, Clark County has had a number of fatal accidents regarding concrete trucks, cement trucks, and I think with the additional traffic we're going to have not from the construction, the residents, we need to do something about this problem, and I think now is the time to start on that. So I'm really concerned that we get going on this and get started. It's just if you look at the Granite 3 proposal, really LeBrun is your major. I mean, in phase 1 and 2, I mean, it's your major entrance. I mean, I drove on T the other day. I mean, I don't know what your plans are for T, but it's pretty narrow. I mean, it's not and I don't even know that they're going to connect with that initially because that's down by phase 5 of the development. So I think we need to get going on this. My other question is on the moratorium. And I don't know exactly how to address this, but I'd like to understand more about the emergency nature of it and why it needed to be done, and yet the only parcel really that's left to develop was given exemption to the moratorium. I read all of the documents on the development. I really like to understand more of this. I don't know what the appropriate venue to do that is, but I believe in that, just putting that out there. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the clarification at at the December 5th meeting. We discussed this in our neighborhood, and all of us, I think people came back with different opinions on what was said. When the Granite 3 in the hearing, they were going to, I think they're allowed to have 150 some odd homes. The question was asked, for instance, there are some lots that probably aren't going to be very good for development. Okay, if they're unable to develop those lots, do they still get the 150X lots? That was something we were trying to answer in our study group. And I think the answer is yes, they do. But it seemed like it was left unclear to a lot of people.
Dave, do you want to try and tackle that one? That's a difficult,
The last piece?
that's a confusing one.
I'm willing to tackle the moratorium too, if that's all right a little bit.
On the number of lots, the developer needs to put forward to us a plan and a plat that shows the number of lots that are out there. If, once that's approved and is put into place and they go out to sell them, if they find out later that some of those lots are unusable, then in order for them to replace them with something else, one, they would have to have additional property that isn't already platted, or that is platted as something else that would be eligible to become lots. But I believe the entire thing would have to come back in front of the hearings examiner, in front of ourselves again.
Have to be replatted. So I don't have the development agreement in front of me, but, and I forget how precise the development agreement was on the number of lots. It makes reference to an exhibit, and there's some narrative about the number of lots, but it's not a subdivision approval. It's a development agreement that vested them to the stormwater
Right.
regulations and to a concept out on the site. The next step is for a subdivision application to come in. Now, they certainly have laid it out preliminarily, because we asked them to take it as far as they could so that everyone could see what they had in mind, so that you can make the best informed decision you could make. But their final subdivision plan could differ on the edges, if you would, from what was in front of you as part of the DA, but not significantly. So I guess the answer would be, if there was a precise number in the DA that said 153 lots, and they had this little layout that they were showing, and then upon further review, they realize, oh, these 3 lots don't work, they might try to rearrange, make a couple lots a little bit smaller, one, this or that, and try to get still
So maximize the number.
153, and bring that to the hearings examiner for approval, and that would meet the intent of the DA. But once a subdivision is approved, those are the platted lots.
Platted.
You are locked into that subdivision. There is a process for revising a plat, but essentially, except for very, very minor changes, you have to go back through the entire public hearing process again in order to do that. That would be very unlikely. What is more likely is some minor deviation between what was the concept in the development agreement and the final plat that the HE would do, but the development agreement doesn't allow for wholesale change there. If you have to have that concept has to stay pretty intact. That would be the answer to that. And I'm not sure what the question on the emergency, I wonder if that has to do with the sub-area plan and the effective date of the ordinance, just making it be immediate.
Well, I was just gonna tell how it came about. I'm a Lookout Ridge person, so everything you say, I agree with. And what I saw as a council member with the Woodburn Hills sub-area is that if anything, it had alleviated, made smaller a lot of the general code requirements that were pervasive in the rest of the city. So I had seen it as something that was actually allowing a developer or developers to be relinquished of more stringent standards. And so I had talked with other council members about looking at the possibility of changing code in this area to make it uniform with the rest of the city. So certainly my intention is not to get rid of view quarters or things that are good about the Woodburn Hills sub-area thing, because that would probably be one of the only things that you mentioned that is good about it. Although I know the city, since the original development went in, the standards of the streets are wider now. But knowing that some developments were coming in the future, I asked that a moratorium till we could change the code be put in place so that the council could have some input on those developments, because usually we don't have any input on the developments other than they come through the planning commission, and we are told if they adhere to the standards that we are to approve them. And that's what we're told as council members. And so I saw this as a way to put an extra stop in new developments to get more of what we're hoping to obtain in that area. So that was the premise, at least in my mind, behind it. So it certainly wasn't, I'm up there, I'm on X Street, I care about my views, I've got a development coming in below me. It was an effort to create bigger lots, preferably to alleviate the congestion that's already on the hill. But after reading your letter, I think absolutely I want to look into it, ask Mitch about it, because I don't want to lose, if there's a potential to, if it's gotten rid of, to allow people to create blocks in the view, I wouldn't want that either. So certainly I would like to address that as a council for it. But that's kind of how it came about. And honestly, I feel like even though what happened, and I was one of the people that did vote against it, we did get a lot of the developer that I don't think we would have gotten if we hadn't had that moratorium, in the fact of lowering the number of lots that went in there. Believe it, they had more.
Right, yeah.
And some pathways and parks that wouldn't have been put up there either. So the intention certainly was to try and be more restrictive on what we got up there, at least on my part. But I know we're unhappy about the density still. But I don't think that moratorium caused the density to be any more. I think if anything, it had the effect of lessening it. Because if they're here, and the moratorium didn't change, they're still under the Woodburn Hills sub-area requirement, because we haven't changed it yet. We have not changed the code yet. That's coming forth in our talks going forth. So that's good to know about, we need to think about the view quarter and the 4 or 5 things that you all listed on there.
We haven't removed the sub-area. We've made
Yeah.
many changes to the sub-area, though.
Yeah, you've had changes in the past. Yeah, the sub-area has not been removed yet, so they didn't get away with anything. It just stood as was, but it had the extra layer of us getting to vote on it. And during the talks of looking at the plans, to ask them for more things. But I know a lot of people ultimately wanted more. I did too.
Paul, Dave, do you have quick items? Yes.
I talked to Mitch this afternoon. He made 3 key points. First one was the development agreement in place for this development preserves the views. The second one was there's no more developable property up there, so it's not a threat to your view. If there were to be property that got developed up there, we would put it under a development agreement to preserve your views. And the last point was that tomorrow night is the public hearing at the Planning Commission, thank you. I used to be part of it. And he suggested that anybody that wants to, one, understand that, what he just explained to me, and 2, wants to provide input on it, should come to that meeting. That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Just very briefly, the development agreement requires parking on both sides. The existing sub-area requires parking on only one side for much of that area. It also requires streets to be the standard width throughout the city, as opposed to the significantly narrower streets that were allowed by the Woodburn Hill sub-area. It also, the development agreement also, as previously mentioned, puts in significant requirements on landscaping, parking, parks, trails, access, so on and so forth. So I really feel like we got a lot out of that development agreement that we would not have had otherwise. I think we have almost half as many home sites as would have been allowed under the old Woodburn Hill sub-area.
In small part, in answer to your question about the parking task force, thank you. If you were one of the folks who wrote back and said you would still be part of that, I think it was frustrating on our staff's part. At that meeting and immediately after, we had this many people that said they'd be on there. And as we tried to get in touch with folks, the number became that big. So I don't know if somewhere in there, folks who had volunteered had actually had talks with people about what happens with parking task forces and those types of groups, and immediately went, we're never gonna get involved in that, no way. I don't know that we've tried to get back in touch with folks recently again or not, or,
We made several, I know that we made several, because you alluded to that, and thank you for being responsive, but I think you might be unique out of that
Well,
group.
no, I know there's other people in Granite Highlands that are interested.
Right, but we need,
Who applied, who volunteered the first time.
right,
they haven't got back in touch with us, is what we're trying to say, is we made outbound calls and emails to those folks trying to get back to the ones that volunteered. We haven't gotten much of any response whatsoever that would be representative of the neighborhood.
we might ask for your assistance.
Yeah, we asked for, we responded to your email, but we never got any further communication that we were still interested, so. So are we going to be able to get something like that going?
I would say that we'll give it another try again. It's tough for us to try and force something forward when we've only got one or two folks who want to take part in that. It's something that needs to be representative of all the neighborhoods up there, otherwise we're gonna have one parking task force that does this, and then it's gonna create a problem somewhere because folks didn't live in that area when decisions were made, and now we're gonna form another one from that neighborhood so it needs to be inclusive of everybody, so.
Can I just say something? I
If,
just-
if it's very quick, this is why I hate doing question and answer during public
I
comment.
just think it's so important to do something about that safety situation that's gonna be developing even worse than it is now. And I don't think it should be let go. Just,
Nope.
you know, there's only a few people that are willing to work on it.
It just, again, it needs to be representative of all the neighborhoods that are up there, otherwise it's gonna be an effort in futility, trust me. It just will. Things aren't gonna end up even, so, yes.
My name is Jason, excuse me, Jason Harway. We live on 491 Stonegate, right next to Don Carroll. What would I like to do tonight? First, I would like to give the speeches that they gave. Just consider them repeated,
Thank
second,
you.
and endorsed. Second, I'd like to thank you guys for the work you're doing. I'd like to thank the explanations that we just got. My granddad was the mayor of a small town when I grew up on the east side. In those days, the mayor went out and helped the guy dig the ditch, you know, went to the store and bought the valve when the plumbing was fixed. So I got to see how democracy worked. We wrote the letter to you about the subcode. Why are we here tonight? We want a dry run of how you guys run your processes so we can be a little bit more effective when we try to work with Mitch and his crew on the sub area. There's a couple of lots across from us that really shouldn't be on that, and I understand that I can work with Mitch. They're steep, they've got vertical cliffs on them, general slope is greater than 50%. There's no utilities. If they want to build on them, they got to dig up the whole length of Stonegate to put sewers in. I can't see us digging up a street and displacing people and blocking their access for weeks, and then coming in and running jackhammers for months on basically a rock pile. So with that, again, second the effort and all of that good stuff, and we're here to listen and learn and see how democracy works. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, and.
If we could,
up here,
that's the only
okay.
way it'll pick you up on the record. Sorry.
Very good. My name is Jean Hauge, and I want to thank you for this beautiful city. I arrived in the city 3 years ago. I came to the gateway of the gorge. I came out of State Route 14. I looked south. What did I see? A wildlife refuge. I looked north. What did I see? Woodburn Hill. When I came back, same thing. And over the 3 years, what have I seen? A park that used to be a lumber yard. It's so beautiful here. And you are all stewards of this. And I know that you are stewards of the Washougal River as well. So I'm just here tonight to thank you for the work that you've done and tell you how much I enjoy this beautiful city. I was a little concerned when I read the minutes of the meeting last week and saw that there were 3 developments under consideration. I'm worried, and there are a lot of other citizens who are worried about the skyline on Woodburn Hill. That's our gateway to the gorge when you look that direction. It's beautiful. We don't want it to look like Lookout at the Ridge. I lived there, so I know what that's like. And we sure don't want the Washougal River to suffer the same thing that's happened down the street next to Riverview Apartments. And I lived there too. So I watched the bulldozers come in and take the forest out. I watched all the animals leave. I watched the deer who stood on the edge of the forest and realized, as Columbia black-tailed deer, they couldn't get to their river anymore. So you are also stewards of the river. We don't want an environmental disaster happening with development here that has happened down the street. And I know that that's Camas, that's not Washougal. But all you have to do is drive down there and drive in and see that when they dug the foundation for those apartments, there were some pretty nice drawings for those senior apartments, that they hit the water table. And so what's going to happen when they lay that pipe? Is all that mud going to drain into your river? And if it does, and when the silt cascades off these watersheds into one of the few natural rivers that's left, you know it covers up all the eggs. And then those fish don't go down the river the next year. So thank you for the work you've done, and I have confidence in you that you will do the right thing when it comes to these developments. You will leave the silhouette of the forest on Woodburn Hill. You will protect the fish, and you will watch over these developments and make sure that they're done correctly. I understand too, as an ex-school teacher, that development does benefit all the schools, doesn't it? The impact fees really help out. So please do it responsibly. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else that would like to address council? Okay. Going into the agenda, and council, just so you know, we do have, we anticipated a executive session this evening after the regular council meeting at 7. If we do end up with some time left from this meeting, though, we may go ahead and do it just after this one and prior to the council meeting, but before 6:30, so that we can get everybody out here as early as possible tonight. So with that, Jennifer, Finance.
Good evening. Coming forth tonight is a 2017 contract that we didn't have all the information for before the December 5th meeting. And it is the PSA with Renee Carroll for Tourism Consulting Services. It has been taken through the Lodging Tax Committee and approved at that level. But since it is over the $10,000, we need to bring it forth to the council for their approval. And attached to the standard PSA is the initiatives for 2017, which is on the back of the packet, and what she's going to be working on this year. We have lots of events that are going to happen in 2017, and then the new communication specialist position, and Rose will continue to work with Renee. So it'll be a great group of folks to continue tourism events in the city of Washougal. And since it is a renewal, per se, because we've done it in the past, I went ahead and put it on consent tonight. I know we normally don't do that, but in order to have it ready to go for 2017, I hope that's okay. I went ahead and put it on consent for this evening. But if you have any questions or comments?
Questions? Dan?
I understand that this is never put out for bid, right?
Back when we originally did it, we did go through and have the process several years ago to where we got Renee in contract and solicited some information at that point. But we haven't done that again in consecutive years, because with the consulting services, we are able to select the most qualified person, in our opinion, to do that kind of work.
How many years has that been?
This is 3?
This is 3,
Oh, I say this is 3.
yeah.
Somewhere close to that.
How is the rate of pay arrived at? Basically, it comes to like $55 an hour.
I'm sorry, a little louder, please.
I was asked how the rate of pay came to be arrived at on the contract. really works out to like $55 an hour, which is pretty good for something part-time in a small city.
Yeah, I think the 55 is her rate. It's not something that we arrived at. It was her rate, and we arbitrarily just put a cap on it, basically. I want to say the first year it was under the 20,000.
It was 10, I believe, the first year, and then the lodging tax committee wanted to expand the services offered, and then we were, had the SUP that year. So the lodging tax committee doubled it to 20, a cap of 20,000 at her rate of pay of $55 an hour.
I think 55 is one of the lowest rates I've seen in any PSA that we've ever done, because, you know, we're not providing any of the overhead that the small business has to provide. Most of the stuff that we see, usually 100 or more per hour, almost for everything. In fact, there's a PSA that'll be coming forward in hopefully in a couple of meetings. And I was looking at it, and there's an intern, and that rate is more than that 55 just because of all the overhead that the company has.
Right, right. Yeah, I see that, because I go through all the checks and look through everything as part of the finance committee. It just like seems to me that we as a small city pay more for a lot of the goods and services that we pay for than we should. I just wish it was negotiated a little bit more stringently.
Joyce?
I'd just like to make a comment. I've worked with Renee in several instances on her work with the city and with the tourism, and I think she's amazing. She does a good job. She's responsible. She's dependable, and she's just, I think she's worth what we're paying her. So.
Do we know if the rate she's charging us is comparable to what she's charging, like for instance, the school district and other contracts that she has throughout East County?
I'm not aware of every contract she has, and I haven't asked to see those
I've never,
contracts.
I've never asked a rate to them.
I'm just curious to know. I'm sure that has to be public information also if
Oh,
there's
yeah.
another
Oh,
public
we could
entity
just-
involved.
We could just ask Dave and
Yeah.
Mike.
It would be good to know.
I just wanted to say I've had a chance to work with Renee, not only on the city stuff, but school district and Downtown Washougal Association. And I can't think of a more capable and committed cheerleader for Washougal and East County than Renee. She is terrific. She's competent, and I don't know many people who have as much energy as she does. So I think she does a great job.
Definitely agree.
I noticed the contract says that we have the option of evaluating her, that we will evaluate her production. How do we do that?
She provides monthly invoices, and Theo and Rose go through them, or myself, to see who she's contacted, if they've submitted information for an event, how well, you know, the events are attended, what events we have. So it's kind of an internal review process between Theo, Rose, and I, and then Dave as well, if necessary.
Much of what you described is inputs. The only output I heard in there was how many people attend the event.
Oh, well, we get that information for the lodging tax report, and we accumulate it for each event, and then we submit it to the state every year. So we do have an output, per se, from that method of submitting that annual report every year in March.
And is that an accurate measure of the value of what she does?
I would assume so, yeah, because the amount of people that come to our events and come to our community that are from out of town. How accurate the information is per each event is kind of up to the event organizers. So I can't say that it's 100% accurate that 35 people came from, you know, Salem, stayed at the hotel, because it is a little bit, it's tourism, so you're not entirely sure. But she does work with the companies and the groups that put these on, gets that information for us, and tries to have a successful event for each one.
Is there anything wrong with including in that section of the contract how we're going to evaluate people that we have contracts like this with? What we've got right now is a summary statement that says we'll evaluate. We have the right to evaluate. Doesn't say we will. It doesn't, certainly doesn't say how. And I think as a public entity, we're guarding the public's money, we're remiss if we don't say, this is how we're going to evaluate the output from this particular contractor. And I've held that view for the last 40 years, back to when I did contracts for the federal government.
So one thing that's nice about the lodging tax program at the state level is there's really a one-to-one nexus between the funds and an outcome, and that is hotel stays. So all of the money that pays for this is hotel motel tax money. We're not using any general funds or general revenues from the city. It's all hotel motel, and the expressed purpose, single purpose of that revenue is to feed back more people staying in the hotels. Otherwise, that constituency wouldn't be supportive of a hotel motel tax because, that makes them less competitive than other areas if their tax gets too high. So by measuring how many people stay, how many people come to the events, and then we have to report that to the state, it's a direct correlation with program effectiveness. Now, the one piece, and we're not required to do this with the state, is do we know if they stayed in the hotel? And we don't ask that. The state doesn't require us to ask that. There's a surrogate for that in did they come more than 50 miles. So there's an assumption in the statute that if travelers came from more than 50 miles away, that in theory they maybe needed to stay somewhere, and so that's satisfied that constituency.
Is the tax that we collect on hotels and motels a surrogate for that kind of evaluation?
If the revenue goes up in the hotel motel tax, some of it could be due to rate increases that the private sector is introducing. So, but if you corrected for that, it could be more bed nights. I think that's the term they use. More bed nights at the hotel. So yes, increased. And in fact, I think that is the broadest measure that we would look at is how's our hotel motel tax revenue doing? And that's doing
Heads and beds.
and
I
it's
think,
doing good.
I think that's your best measurement from what I've heard so far.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I mean, and this is what Renee does in here is part of what we do in our private company as well. Our rate would be easily double what Renee's is in here. I've been surprised that she's as low as she is. But I think a couple of the things that in sitting in on the hotel motel tax committee's meetings, I'm not on that committee, but I sit into some of the meetings. From not having Renee to year one, there was a significant sigh of relief and I think optimism on events within the community, and that events did better when she was here and she was kind of that go-to person and the one in the middle of everybody. And I think that was one of the reasons that the committee was very comfortable, and the committee came forward asking to double that amount the following year.
That's
Because
sentiment.
that worked so well.
That's sentiment, that's not an objective measure. There's your objective measure right there, and the one that you put out is an objective measure.
You go ahead, Dave.
I'm just looking for an objective measure to be put into the contract, not this time, but next time.
I honestly don't believe you have one. We do this work, and we get hired to do the work because of the results of events that we get involved in.
Is
The
it the
attendance?
best one we've got though?
The attendance goes up or the attendance doesn't go up. You see it written up in publications left and right, or you don't see it written up. People are talking about it or people aren't. The community's excited about it or they're not. It's very objective at best, except for, was it a better event? Was it bigger? Was everything done right? Did we have a lot of problems?
That's all subjective, yeah.
That's all very subjective. But in the events world and in the marketing world, that's what you go by. That's what people hire and fire people for and move contracts for that type of work. Because that's what you're looking for.
Well, I'm still looking for some objective measure. I've heard two of them proposed. I like them both. I understand they're not perfect, but at least it'll give us an objective idea of the effectiveness of our contractor.
No, I think it might, but I don't think it's foolproof. I don't think it's close.
We can deal with that when we do the evaluation.
The other
Obviously,
thing,
the contractor doesn't lack for representatives to step forward and say, wait a minute.
Well, I think that's because, I think there were a number of people who have experienced things in a number of different ways for a number of years in this community and not in this community. And in the case of this individual contractor, they've done an extremely good job.
the other thing I would say is, given your experience with both the federal government and the state government, I would be flabbergasted if you didn't see many situations where people were spending dollars to track pennies.
Oh, yes.
We need to be careful we do not do that.
Well, that's why I was looking for information that's readily available. And those two items seem to me to be readily available. Did I miss on that? Are we gonna have to develop that information, or do we already have it?
We know what,
Tax
Yeah.
revenue.
we know what tax revenue is, and it's going up, 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 up.
And the other one you mentioned, Jen, I
The,
forgot.
the report that we do to the state, we have to put together every year anyway.
Yeah.
And it pulls all the information from all the events that we hold.
And that's one of the reasons I like that one, because it's already being done, so it's not increasing the cost of information.
Yeah?
Would it be, I think Joyce is first, so.
Go ahead.
Would it be possible to ask for some kind of reporting before the council from Ms. Carroll? Because I have nothing personal against her, or whoever does the job. I'd just like to hear more about what he's actually accomplished from the person that does
Sure.
it. So,
I think that would be worthwhile for the council to meet her. We only have 2 hotel motels in Washougal, right?
Correct. And then, I think the Airbnb has started to impose the tax as well. So we get a little bit from,
Airbnb. We used to have a B&B. Do we still have that?
I haven't seen anything itemized from that recently.
That was probably the place next to my place, and someone else moved in.
Oh, did they?
It's up that direction, yeah.
That's why I'm probably sitting on the city council today, that conditional use permit. But, no, they don't use it as a B&B facility anymore,
Okay. Okay.
if that was the one.
Gibson, I think, was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, they've moved.
Other questions on this PSA? Is that Gibson? Gibson's right down here. Gibson's the
Oh,
yellow
it's
house.
the owners was Gibson.
Okay,
Oh, I don't know.
The Gibson B&B was in Lookout Ridge,
Yeah, that's the one I.
2 houses away from me.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Jen, anything else?
Nope, that's all I have.
Rob, you're up. A retainage release.
Yes. So we've got I've been working with the, thank you, Mayor Council. Been working with the city attorney. I didn't put a PowerPoint together, but I've got a few bullet points to talk you through what's going on with the Sladen project. The original completion date was back in June of 2016. With added work, the contract was extended October 31st. The pumps that were specified in the project did not meet the design criteria set forth in the approved facility plan and project specifications. So they've been ordered. They won't be here till end of January, early February, won't be up and running until April. So that's the soonest they could do their retained release funds. They're working on a small margin with this project because we did get excellent bids. But the hope is that they could get that retained funds of $579,000 released sooner than April or May of this year. Working with Ken, there is an allowance in the RCW that allows you to use a performance bond in place of retained funds, and we would be requesting a performance bond in the amount of $400,000, which is roughly double the amount of the remaining work.
It takes a resolution to do that, apparently.
Yes.
In the statute, so your next meeting, not tonight, that resolution would be for your consideration. So interestingly enough, that's what the statute requires for us to do this. So council resolution.
the pipe size, was that an oversight on someone's part, or is it just?
The
once-
consultant, yes, and they're paying for it,
They are paying for it.
yes.
So
But
it's
it's
just,
still-
it's
it's
just
still-
taking them longer,
it
but they're
extends the
operating
contract.
at no cost right now, and they're trying to get their funds freed up that would eventually have gone to them anyways, earlier than April.
Yes,
And the oversight is not the contractor whose retainage we're holding. Oversight is a different consultant.
Oh,
So there's no fault of the contractor in this.
Right.
And the delays are such that, again, no fault of their own, but our contract with them doesn't allow us to release retainage until they finish up this last little piece, which is no fault of their own. We don't want to lose any leverage that we have with them. They've been in good faith with us for a long time on this project, doing a great job. They're going to finish the project. We can free up the cash flow, we get the bond, everything should be good.
We don't want to put somebody out of business.
right. And so this didn't cost us any, or won't cost us anything additionally.
correct.
No.
In
Just this
fact,
administrative.
we end up being somewhat more protected than we would under the retainage.
Kind of, sort of. I mean, it's a.
Right now, we have the cash,
We
so,
have cash, right?
Cash right now,
and a lot more.
And then it's a bond.
but it's a small amount of remaining work in relation to the $12
To the
million
retainage.
of the original contract, or almost 13 now.
Kind of a unique situation, and we believe that we wouldn't have pursued such an extensive sort of a thing to have to do, bringing a resolution to you, if we didn't feel that it was the right and fair thing to do with our contractor.
Other questions? Okay. Jump to guard trail site.
Yeah, so we've had funding for this project for going on 3 years now. It's kind of been slow going. The piece of the project you can see right here is, the piece of the project you can see right off to the left by the old track, if you've been up to the new school now, is actually that piece is all in the county, which has driven some of the costs on the project. And then Sunset View is off to the right side, and Sunset Ridge neighborhood further to the right of that. So the project was originally funded by the Safe Routes to School program, administered by WashDOT. Total funding for design, permitting, construction was $599,000. Design contract portion was funded at $148,305. So we're, design and permitting are basically 90% complete, and construction is scheduled for the summer of this year, and hopefully have it done by late this year, early next year. So the original design contract we set up with the consultant was $107,000. We had 4 additions to the original contract that are being requested, not at this meeting, at the next meeting. We had survey, when we did the original estimate in-house, we had right-of-way that we were using from Clark County GIS. When we actually went out and surveyed that, we found out that that right-of-way is incorrect. It was actually less, so we've had to redesign the road to fit the trail within that existing right-of-way section. Archaeological impacts, as you're probably well aware, with Gibbons Creek and Campen Creek, there's lots of sort of hot spots in this entire area. And so we had to relocate the trail near the track to avoid any impacts to known archaeological sites. The portion of the trail I was pointing out, there off to the, basically off to the left of the picture is all in the county. That's all within a new shoreline area that they have. So we had to go through the county shoreline permitting process, which was unanticipated when we started. And then right-of-way, WashDOT has changed their right-of-way requirements, now requiring they treat a temporary construction easement as a taking. So you've got to go through all the right-of-way process just as if you were buying property from the property owner. So that being said, the contract modification is $47,300. That brings the total amount up to $154,300. So we'd be looking for an additional $59.95 of city funds beyond what's authorized by the original design contract.
So, go back to the right-of-way acquisition again, Rob.
Mhm.
So are we actually paying something anybody something for that, or what does that mean?
You go through all the same process as if you're buying it, you just have a $0 payment on the bottom line.
So it just takes time.
Yeah, and it's got to be done by certified right-of-way consultants.
So sometimes people ask me what I mean by, sometimes we as the government are the enemy. This is a good example.
Federal funds
One,
have a lot
I
of
know,
strings.
but one, it's a trail. Two, it's on Bear property. It's just a trail on Bear property when you get down to it. It's now over $600,000 in 3+ years, and it's a trail over Bear property. Not tearing anything down. Questions? Other than that rhetorical one I just threw out there.
I would just add to that, grr.
It just,
What was the grant match fund for that again, was it?
There was no original grant fund
Oh,
match.
there
It was
wasn't?
all funded by Safe Routes to School.
Yeah,
But
it's-
now
Oh.
with.
we have no
these-
match.
Oh, okay, so it was, this 5,000 is our.
This'll be the
only
first piece of-
that
and
we've
we'll
had
have to
to
see-
put into it.
Right.
Which is more than I would have thought we would have spent on the entire project, period, but.
Yeah.
And the reason that small amount has to come to the council is because it's a low.
15, it's over 15% of the original
Right.
approval.
Right, in the professional services agreement, even though the number's only $6,000 out of pocket for us, the contract's going from 107 to 140.
54.3.
154.3. So that's the mechanism. Others are paying most of that, but you have to approve the contract change.
Okay. That'll be coming back to us on the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. None of what I just said is on you, Rob. None of that is on you. You know that.
Well, that's all state and federal stuff.
I know, it
yeah.
just,
Frustrating, yes.
so I may have you write that one up for our representatives and senators that are still asking in Olympia and Washington for examples of, them getting in our way and delaying things and making things cost more and everything else. There's a little, but pretty clear example. So anyway, thank you. With that, that ends the major portion of the agenda. Any folks from the public that would like to address council one more time?
I would just like to have some clarification on the Traffic Task Force Committee. Do you mean to say that you are opposed to setting that up or going forward with that?
Not at all.
Or could you explain how we could get that going?
Rob or Dave, which one of you wants to
I'll
jump in
take it.
first?
I think we can reach out again, and we may ask for your assistance with neighbors who aren't necessarily your immediate neighbors, but in other neighborhoods. There was a lot of enthusiasm at that meeting.
Yeah, there
Oh,
was, yeah.
And we appreciate your enthusiasm to participate, but we need it to be contagious a little bit into some other neighborhoods. And I think the point that the mayor's trying to make is that the problem transcends Granite Islands. It affects Riverview Terrace, Lookout, and a couple of the other neighborhoods, and it's important for us to make sure that everybody has a voice in that. So we really want to meet with everybody together. So,
Is there a list available of HOA?
yes, we have,
Records?
yeah.
Who has that?
Trevor, our
Oh,
public
okay.
works director, so
Okay.
we'll be in touch.
Okay.
No, we certainly want to move forward on that, so.
I was just gonna ask, could you tell me the name of that, and should they call Trevor or
Trevor, please. Yep.
Trevor, what was the name of the committee again?
I don't
Or-
know.
I don't know that we had a name.
We
The
didn't have a formal name for it, but it's,
Woodburn Traffic?
it'd be kind of the Woodburn Hill. Some of it's not really up on the hill, it's the bottom of the hill, but,
Riverview, Lookout, Granite.
right. And it was just looking at parking and traffic.
Traffic Committee, yeah, I was at that meeting when it occurred, and then just have them call Trevor if they're interested in.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, because I can.
Right, and we have the contact information for the folks who were at that meeting who raised their hand. It just wasn't the type of response once it came to, okay, how about this date, and this date, and this date? Now, that's not universally true. Obviously, we had some folks that are here that were responsive, but others were not.
Extremely quick comment on the same subject. I think it's really an issue of street safety rather than a neighborhood issue. I've been in the construction industry for most of my life before I decided to give that up. I've seen the big trucks get in accidents. They're a tremendous danger. There's a pinch point. I'm really concerned about it. Every time I have a project or had a project, I really talk to my drivers. I sometimes sit out there myself and watch what's going on because it's not that they're not safe, it's just that they have very big vehicles and that's a very steep road. And I think it's more of a safety issue than a neighborhood issue. I think that's the problem. And I'm not complaining, I'm just saying.
I think we're talking two different things. Because certainly what we were approached on the previous part was certainly a parking problem.
Well, I'm talking about the pinch point caused by the parking on LeBrun where it turns the corner by the apartment.
And that's why I say that this committee has to be well-rounded from all of those neighborhoods up there. You've got one isolated thing over here. The others all have a vastly different issue that they want to have resolved, and the two run into each
I
other.
just want to emphasize that pinch point and the actual road safety issue, I think. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead into an executive session. Was Jeanette stick